President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's 45-man cabinet have officially begun work after they took the oath of office on Monday. Nigerians will now be looking forward to how they carry out policies set before them and makes their life better. One of the key ministers that the citizens will be hoping delivers is the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, who assumed office yesterday and has pledged to work to reduce the pain of President Bola Tinubu's reform policy actions on Nigerians. He said in his remark at a meeting with staff of the Federal Ministry of Finance in Abuja that the far-reaching fiscal and monetary reforms of the present administration would reset the nation's economy. The minister added that they will build on the achievements of the last minister and take the economy of Nigeria to greater heights. So joining us on the morning show this morning is when we focus on what the minister should be doing, and other economic players in Tinubu's cabinet is Paul Alaje, a Nigerian economist. Welcome to the morning show. Paul Alaje, let's go straight to it. Let's talk about Mr. Wale Edun. He has a lot of work on his hands to fix the Nigerian ailing economy. Let's also talk about our currency this morning. There have been many schools of thoughts. We have seen the effect of a float on our currency. Others have argued for a peg till we face this conundrum. What should be the thoughts of now of Mr. Wale Edun as regards this process?
Okay, so first of all, Mr. Wale Edun is occupying a unique position under the former Minister of Finance, who was just Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Mr. Wale Edun's direction is a bit different. He's a Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. And when you look at things that concern the economy, the Central Bank is one of those, NNPC is one of those, the new Ministry of Blue Ocean is one of those things. So all of those things, he will be the one to coordinate to ensure that policies align. This was what we kept saying in the 8 years of President Buhari, that you need someone to be responsible for coordinating all of these things. So he has a lot in his hands, and I can tell you 133 million people when they talk to President Buhari, the next persons they want to talk to is about your fiscal policy. How are you using it to largely help the country to reduce poverty, to reduce hunger, to reduce deprivation? You spoke about currency, but it's important to know that China is devaluing and World Bank IMF is complaining. Nigeria did not devalue. World Bank IMF, they are both complaining. Why? Because when you are a producer and you are devaluing or you peg your currency, it's a threat to the rest of the world. You are telling the rest of the world to depend on your good for export. When you are consuming and you are devaluing, you are only digging your own grave. You know why? Because your people want to travel out for education because of quality of education in the country. So if they were paying approximately 10,000 pounds at exchange rate of 1,000 naira to 1 pound, by the time you devalue, and let's assume that gets to 2,000 pounds, then you are saying overnight they have to look for more resources, or they will have to stay with the quality of education that is in Nigeria. That is why citizens will groan, citizens will be in pain when a consuming nation, I underline that, a nation that focuses just on importation, that is 90% of our consumptions are imported. And the evidence are there. For those of us in the studio this morning and those people that are watching, or those that will watch us in your future, you can answer this question as a Nigerian living in Nigeria. You have 4 ways of spending your income. The first one is your marginal propensity to consume. That is, for everything you buy, how many of them are made in Nigeria? That's your marginal propensity to consume. The second one is marginal propensity to save. What proportion of your income are you saving? The third one is marginal rate of taxation. That is, what proportion of your income are you spending on taxes and charges to government? The last one, which of course is the big elephant in the room, is marginal propensity to import. What does it mean? What proportion of your income are you spending on imported commodities? And we can check around everywhere we are today, from mobile phone that we use, the laptops that we use, to everything we use, to toothpick. Marginal propensity to import is a big challenge. Now, this is economic principle. When you are when you are a high importing nation, that is, your marginal propensity takes more than 50%. In fact, when it takes more than 25%, you should be wary of devaluation. But in the case of Nigeria, it takes as much as 75%. of how we spend, how the poorest and the richest spend their money in the country. Marginal propensity to import is about 0.75, which is huge. So you shouldn't be devaluing. You should rather look for means of defending your reserve. And I saw JP Morgan projecting for Nigeria about an amount that is less than $3 billion in the Nigerian vote. I think that calls for alarm. I think the coordinating minister of the economy deliberately removed Minister of Finance so that it will be needs to talk to the acting governor of Central Bank to come out to let us see why we have an audited report that said otherwise as at December last year. Does it mean that a lot has changed in such a time, or do we need to investigate?
Because if there's an auditing body that audited it, is there not a need to be able to allow the auditing body to clarify further on what they audited in the first place? And you see, because, and I also, as you answer that, and I'm also going back to this school of thought, because a lot of people are saying the best way forward is a managed float, devalue the lives of the people further, hurt them, hurt their businesses even further. That's the best way to cushion the effect. But are you not supposed to also call on the auditors that checked through the reports in the first place?
Okay, so there are about three things here. The first one is calling the audit firm. The audit firm had signed, actually, when an audit firm signed for you, they will sign that they will defend it. So if there are...
don't they have a right to defend it?
No, they have rights to defend it because their stamp, it is not my stamp that is on it. I cannot stamp for Central Bank when I was not engaged to audit the Central Bank. Anyone that audited the document, the legitimacy of the document actually depends on the strength of the auditor. And when you look at the company we are talking about, they call them Big Four, Big Five, as the case may be. So they will be always available. But here is it. We need to look at it in the second, look at another perspective. Could it also mean that there are transactions that had happened between January till now, with that is assuming that the first document, that the last document shared or submitted, the report submitted by this audit firm are valid. So we now need to question what has happened. Why is JP Morgan, a very respected organization? You remember that the last administration, they understood what it means to disrespect or disregard rating organization. If you remember in 2015, Nigerian government said, we don't need JP Morgan, and it was all over the media. But I tell you, Nigeria went to a recession. In fact, when IMF Christine Lagarde came to Nigeria and said Nigeria was fine, and in fact, our economy was robust, some of us only laughed and said, IMF, we understand you wanted Nigeria to borrow money. And I can also tell you that with this report published by JP Morgan and the report shared by the big two out of the major audit firms in Nigeria and around the world, Nigeria will also be looking at borrowing money shortly. And you can take my word for it, either from IMF or World Bank, because our positioning now is really very weak, even if this revelation has not been shared by the JP Morgan. But JP Morgan is a very important institution you just cannot joke with. And most of the time, when a consuming nation keeps devaluing, then you need to pay. Well, this is my biggest fear. Look at one of the European countries by the name Greece. This was the position they got to before Greece went down the drain. This is why the seat all the ministers are taking is not that of the one they should be throwing up babariga or they should be wearing suit and tie. It's one they must wear their tennis, their canvas, their jeans, and they start the work right now. How can we generate money in FX? That should be the language. From Maritime.
Let me ask you, because that was the two questions I was going to ask you. Number one, that popular phrase that went around during the election cycle, consumption to production. Because you've talked about, we have a big issue on our hands. And then yesterday when Rotus was speaking here, talked about the fact that one of the biggest issues that the new Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy must face is our issue of debt. But here I hear you talk about borrowing even more, where we are supposed to be addressing our debt. How do we, what should he begin to do as he's coming to office?
I am not actually supporting that we should borrow more.
But
I am only telling you that,
no choice.
Yes, because we never knew the position of our foreign reserve. And I can tell you, I just conducted a research with one of the universities in Abuja, and the research reports reveal that foreign borrowing is already hurting Nigeria. It's 89%. It's having 89% negative impact on Nigeria. foreign borrowing. But we are in a position where if that report is genuine, is correct, if that projection, I beg your pardon, the estimate is correct, then Nigeria, we need to go and look for more monies instead of generating more money. Although, for me, I'm of the school of thought that we should generate more funds. So than...
I'd like you to address that. So two things. What I'd asked you was, in this era of generating more funds, that's one question. Then the second part would then be, in the event that we have to, not because we want to borrow money, how do we then begin to address the issue of debt?
Okay, so already we are in a very horrible position with the issue of debt. Even in the report, the money borrowed by central bank never go to the debt management office. And you can look at debt management office report, the money borrowed by central bank, and that was not the only one. Ways and means also never go to the debt management office. So how do you even estimate how much Nigerian authority or Nigerian government is doing? Nigeria as a nation, if when you think of debt and you want to quickly run to debt management office, only for you to get a blow below the belt that, hey, we have something from JP Morgan, we have this one from, and you will be shocked. So here is it. The maritime sector is losing approximately $50 billion just because we have not implemented some of the policies and acts that have been passed, that can give us a lot of revenue. I want to believe that the minister that has just been assigned, Minister Oyetola, will look at how do we implement this policy? What are the bottlenecks that are within this? Again, that's one. Two, how do we promote exports if we don't have a functional port? And we don't spread our ports all around the country. Everybody cannot come to Lagos because we already have traffic concerns, traffic challenges. We already have it. Or as I speak to you, traffic level in Lagos reduced, not because people don't have vehicles anymore, but people they cannot afford to put PMS in their vehicles. But you see, a time will come where the effect of this PMS prices will reduce. So it will not be as though the economy has recovered. No, the economy has not recovered. It is the people that we adjust eventually. So you need to understand when economists are using tricky language, like tricky word to say, don't worry, people are now, the economy is balanced. It's not balanced because your inflation that you experienced last year and this year is cumulative in your life. It is not individualistic in nature. So how do we, if we had $50 billion today to our revenue, and it's coming in hard currency, I can tell you that would be more than what central bank had as balance in the last 8 years. Far more than those. Than what he had, did I say 8 years? Even in the last 12 years. It will be far more than that. But we need someone, we need a group of persons, we need to create an institution around the maritime sector. Look at gas flaring, for instance. How much in revenue are we generating from gas flaring? The money should come in US dollars. So you see, we live in an economy where those that are sometimes, not all, at the ends of affairs, when they are comfortable, they just feel things should go as usual because there is no pressure that is attached. If there should be there should be pressure, it is now. Because I can tell you, Nigeria have a lot of expectation from those ministers as attention is gradually leaving the president to those who are his best 45, as I call them. These are his best 45 because these are the persons he put in ministry and agency. But can they score a goal against Brazil? Can they score a goal against Argentina? And who are these Brazil? Hungry Nigerians who are struggling with their life, who have learned so much how to skip meals. So can they score a goal and make them relatively better off in the coming period?
Let me ask you, the future is here. In Nigeria, we've been talking about the future forever. The future, the future, the future. Sovereign Wealth Fund was designed for the future. Excess crude fund designed for the future. Money from revenue that's coming from selling crude when the prices went up is supposed to be for the future. The future is here. So it's not any story about the future anymore today.
But the preparation of the foreign of the excess crude is even less than $1 billion, not 1 trillion. It's less than $1 billion. That is not even up to 1 trillion. You can confirm it's a bit above $500 million. That is the future we have prepared for. That's where we find ourselves as today in terms of balances.
Is right here.
Yes.
Now, in terms of what we should be talking about, what should be the one or possibly maximum two key areas that the fiscal policy of the new Minister of Coordinating Minister of Nigeria's economy, what should be the key area or two key areas that his fiscal policy should be pointing to and saying we have to massively invest in to prepare for that future that we have wasted all this while? What should be the key areas?
So I will start from the coordinating minister. What is hurting all of us is the valuation of Naira, whether we like it or not. So, but what must we do? My answer will come from finding solution to what we must do to boost exports and what we must do to find substitution for import. So I'll give you an instance. What is responsible for depleting our FX is import of what's it called now, of PMS. About 40% of the FX need is coming from PMS because every day it's essential. So those who said that we really don't need functional refineries are not telling us complete truth. They have their own personal interests and things they are defending. So how do we ensure that we make refineries work? And I'll tell you, what I was expecting Mr. President should do is to say the 4 refineries in the hands of NNPC should be given out. I see no reason why NNPC is holding tight to those refineries. And I think it was a mistake when President Obasanjo actually gave the refinery out to one of the persons that the same government is now, they went to launch his refinery. Meanwhile, the person had one of our refineries given to him and he was supposed to give monies to government. So if it was not important, why did we now go?
They say Yaradua reversed that. That was the argument.
That is, he said what?
Yaradua reversed that.
That's what I'm saying. It's the same thing. Why was it reversed? When we know today, everybody is now looking up to that refinery. Let me be very honest with you. No matter what we do, if local refineries don't function, which is production, we will keep consuming. If you don't consume, your productivity will be lower. If you don't put fuel in that your vehicle, we don't have any alternative. Because at a time when Nigeria should support electric cars, it turned to a jest in our National Assembly, not knowing that is the future. The future that was prepared for, the future was only storytelling. We did not prepare adequately for it. That's why we find ourselves here. When the rest of the world, even countries such as Ghana, is already looking at investing in electric vehicles, in Rwanda, electric vehicle, in what's it called, Kenya, electric vehicles. In Nigeria, we are still stocked because the argument was so baseless because we produce crude. Therefore, we should remain crude. We should remain a country that depends highly on PMS. So what Mr. Wale Edun should be looking at is the coordinating minister. Call NNPC, find who is the Minister of Petroleum or Petroleum for State, and all other key stakeholders. What do you need? Especially Minister of Trade and Investment. Because you cannot do so much. When we say trade in Economist, we are not referring to buying and selling. We are talking of international trade. You see, that minister is so key with Minister of Finance and Central Bank, because changing an economy is not a function, is not what one man will do. How do we change orientation? You see, if you go to China, average Chinese person is thinking of what to sell to the rest of the world. When you come to Nigeria, average person is thinking of what to buy. For young people, how do I buy game so that I can play PS? Meanwhile, in Japan, somebody is thinking, how do I produce? How do I create an app? That orientation will change. And you not come for a National Orientation Agency to come on television or radio to talk. We must change it indeed from secondary school to change orientation. But now, how do we change?
Now you're just taking it to where I'm hoping that we will go, the quality of our education. And the government has got to focus on the education. It is not about national orientation. It's about the orientation of the young people through education. Is the minister, the coordinating minister of the economy, going to say we need to invest more in education to develop the next generation of game developers, app developers, systems developer, application developer, and developer of all kinds of things that the rest of the world require? Because we have young people who are tech savvy, who are very brilliant.
And a lot of them.
I'm still looking for that to fiscal policy.
I just mentioned one.
But you seem to the point you've been making has been focused on oil.
No. I'm saying
because you're saying our consumption of petrol.
No. I'm saying that the immediate solution.
Yes.
You see, focusing on education. If a child goes to primary school, secondary school, those are medium, long-term solutions. I'm talking of what can reduce the impact of pains on us immediately. So, as much as you want to solve a problem in terms of long term, you must also solve what is going on now. because people are having challenges. Now, in the long term, it is not just education, even health, and so many other sectors, transport, road construction, you know, and if I can give you another one that is almost immediate, you can call short to medium-term solution, is what is driving inflation. 40.08% is what the National Bureau of Statistics last reported regarding inflation for July. What is driving it? Food inflation is about 27%, and food inflation has major impact in all of those. How do we provide security for those on farms so that instead of having a new home in IDP camps, they can go back to their farm harvest and bring to the city for us? So it is, how do we fund? So in presenting the next budget, which is the function of Mr. Wale, how do we vote more monies into security, into education? So at the end of the day, it's not just about education. Education is important, and I will by no means say that it is not. But it's what kind of education should we be looking at? Should it be university education or education to become doctors, nurses, lawyers, engineers, economists? No. It is, what is the rest of the world buying right now? We must be willing to sell to the rest of the world.
But what the rest of the world is buying, we don't have competitive advantage.
But we need to start providing that competitive advantage.
Thing you have to talk
Mr.
about.
Rufai, I need to quickly say this. You see, the lies that have been told to Africa, it's about competitive advantage. They have told our leaders that your competitive advantage remains on farms. No, go to farms.
No, hang on a minute. Why I said this is this. See, you want to make production happen. Today now we are talking about removing energy subsidy, but you forget that the Germany, France, and the other industrial nations you want to compete with are subsidizing energy to be able to bring up production. But we were removing energy subsidy because we don't have money. Secondly, competitive advantage in the case of skill and manpower. Most of the skill and manpower are going across the border and going abroad. You are hemorrhaging a lot of skills. No competitive advantage. 3, you need capital to be able to run competitive advantage. That's why China is a state capitalism economy. The state funds capitalism. Most of the Chinese companies you see prospecting here, they get subvention from the states. We don't have that. So where is the competitive advantage? How quick can we scale this?
I understand that there are a lot of challenges, but here is the truth. If we must produce what will be the foundation, which the state must take headlong, is to make power available and affordable. So whether government is going to fund it or government is going to allow private sector to make it available and expect full returns to come in the medium term, it's another conversation entirely. You remember that I've said, even on your platform, that the proposed increase by the DISCO must not be allowed to stand. If not, you'll be asking more factories, more industry to go down. So can Mr. Wale provide such support again for power sector, because he's the coordinating minister for the economy and is the one that has the zip of the pulse of the nation?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's been really great having you on the show and just dissecting and setting an agenda for the new Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy. We'll come back to this conversation. We'll need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to continue speaking on the economy. You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We still have with us here Paul Alaje, Nigerian economist, and we have been reviewing the Nigerian economy, especially the task ahead of the brand new Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy. Thank you so much for highlighting a number of things. Even off air, we've been talking about this challenge that the minister faces and how we can recover the economy. You're responding to Rufai's question, and I'd just like to ask in terms of when you talk about trade, especially ability to export. And heavy on our minds is small businesses in Nigeria, how they're surviving and support they can receive, even in terms of stimulating the economy, and this reorientation around we thinking of things to produce. You know, you responded to the competitive advantage question and the fact that it's not just that. There are challenges, there are barriers, but we do have the capacity to produce, to export. So what are some of the things that the minister can begin to do to provide an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, for Nigerians to begin to hopefully produce, to export?
Okay, first of all is the capacity of the businesses. President Tinubu had mentioned that it was going to support small businesses, because you mentioned small businesses, yes, with about he said 100,000 of them with 1 million naira each. I think the amount is small. It's small, very small. And I think the number he wants to target is also very small. We have about 40 million SMEs in Nigeria. So how can we be targeting 100,000 out of 40 million with 1 million naira? When before the president got to office, 1 million naira is now the equivalent of that money now is about 500,000 naira. Wow. So why are you supporting just so if you want to support, I think the president should leave about 5 million naira for not less than 10 million SMEs. You are going to see the impact. But policy should now come around that. That's where you need the Ministry of Finance to first provide the money. You need the Ministry of Trade to provide the money. That SMEs that is export oriented, and you can at least employ 2 more persons. We will give you this either as grant. Government are just giving states 5 billion. And they said 52% is grant. Do the same for businesses. Because that's government. Do the same for business or tell those state governors to do it for SMEs. So give 52% as grants to businesses that are export-oriented. What does that mean? And let them also have a minimum of 2 employees. So if you are targeting 10 million, you are saying that you want to engage 20 million extra people. So what will happen to unemployment? It will crash significantly. What will happen to export? It would increase. What will happen to foreign reserves? It will improve. And you have supported production. Because they know to remain, they have to keep producing. So you may not give them all the money 100%, but give them 52 just as you've done to state. You are going to see a dramatic boost. That's when you know that Nigeria can export shea butter. As much as shea butter, because there are so many African countries that they still carry natural air and they need shea butter. That's when you know that black soap will be exported, because I've been to a few African countries and I see people buy black soap, some of which Nigerians could produce and sell to those countries. So if you support small business, and I'm not saying don't support large businesses. Yes, large businesses, they are still part of the backbone of the economy. But you see, most of the pain people are feeling are businesses that their net worth is less than 50 million naira. And those are the businesses that employ 5 to 10 people. But how do we deliberately support them with about 5 million naira and say, hey guys, we want you, once you can convince us in a presentation. We have seen a program where people wrote business plans, and we even have a private sector persons running this thing and giving millions of dollars to Africans. But instead of looking at Africans, just do for Nigeria. And your target should be, if it's tech, you have an app that can be exported to the rest of the world, we are going to support you. But please, employ, and it must be registered in Nigeria. It must be a Nigerian company. Yes. And please,
not Delaware.
No. And please, and if you will list it virtually, list it here in Nigeria. Don't list it abroad. So that the monies come to us. You are going to see a dramatic change. And I hope this is what Minister of Finance will do in his next budget and say we want to support small businesses. President has already called this grant. Can we increase this money? 52% go to small businesses. We have export going all around the country. And what you see is that then the Minister of Blue Economy must ensure that to export will be like walking in the park. It will be like a walk in the park, I beg your pardon. That's to export. To export now is very difficult. To import is even headache, because you have to pay demurrages that is not necessary. The port and its environment is not organized. It's too complex.
Very quickly, just before we go, there is the future. A lot of people have lied to young Nigerians that they're the leaders of the future, while their age mates are becoming prime ministers and presidents in other parts of the world, while their age mates are taking position of leadership in Canada, in US, in UK, and so on. Now, the future for me then means that what do we need to do? The fiscal policy that will support the education of our young people. Very quickly, let's touch on that, because we can't let you go in 30 seconds.
Well, I will just tell you that a friend of mine, who is my age mate, is a minister in Sierra Leone, Freetown. And I remember that we always cross-check books, talk about African economy. And he says that he's even old to be minister, that there are even younger people that are ministers to this. Now, Africans and Nigeria needs to look at quality of education. We also need to know that the age bracket of political leadership is rather too high. We need to bring it down, because when you look at the average number of people living in Nigeria, the majority of Nigerians are people that are lower than age 45. They take about 80%. So even 35. So how do you now say even those? 18. So how do you now say people that are far above in age should be, because we are not in the same generation. There is a major disconnect with what is happening in that generation and reality of today. It will be tougher to convince a man to invest in app development if the man is above 60 years old, and a man who is less than 40 years old to talk to him about app, because it is way of life. If you travel out, there are places you are sometimes rendered useless because you don't need to leave your room. You order taxi, you order food, you order everything. Everything will come and meet you. That is the economy of today. So in doing all of these, we now need to know that they have integrated all of those in the education system. Yes. Our own education system, a governor said a couple of days back, that people still sit in his own state. People still sit, and he's a governor, on bare floors to receive education. Meanwhile, that has changed. People now carry tablets to school. Yes. So many other things gone on the day where you say don't give children anything mobile or laptop. Today, the future is now. And in making this future happen, we need to see people who have seen the future. Some of the people that are talking about the future, they are still in the past. So you cannot see the future when you are at the past. For you to be ahead, you have to keep forging ahead.
I know that there's so much for you to speak about, and we will continue the conversation.
Thank you so very much.
Definitely. And so, well, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much.